Internet, I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And before we get into it, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I loved this. I loved this a lot. This was the third book by Matt that I've read, and this is by far and away my favorite. So I'll give you a brief sort of synopsis and then we'll get into it a little deeper. Basically, The Midnight Library is about a woman named Nora, and she's having a really bad time. Just everything is bad in her life, she feels. She has a lot of regrets about things that might have been if she had made different choices. Like when she was a girl, she was a serious swimmer. She and her father especially felt that she could have been on the path to the Olympics if she had kept with it, but she gave up. Then her and her brother were in a band, and it was really set to become a famous band, and they were set up to have a record deal, and she pulled out of it. That caused a lot of tension between her and her brother because, of course, to him, he felt like it was because of her that now he's gonna miss out on this big opportunity. So when we meet Nora, she's working at a music shop called String Theory, which is a very cute name for a music shop. She teaches music lessons on the side. She lives alone. She has a cat who dies right off the bat. So all of this is happening in the first few pages. The cat dies. She loses her job. Her brother's upset with her. Her parents are both dead. She feels like she has nothing. She at one point had a fiance, but after her mom died, they broke up. She wonders what could have been with him. At one point in her life, her best friend Izzy asked her to move to Australia with her, but she turned her down. She wonders what might have been with that. And she gets to the point where she decides that she doesn't want to live anymore. And all this, we're getting all this, like I said, the first few pages, and then Nora decides to die. What happens from there is she tries, and while her body is sort of in the place between death and living, she wakes up and she's in a library called the Midnight Library. Inside that library is a woman named Mrs. Elm, who Nora recognizes as the librarian from her school library back when she was a girl. And Mrs. Elm was a woman who really showed kindness to Nora. So that's why her brain, is manifesting Mrs. Elm in this library instead of somebody else. So Mrs. Elm sort of fills her in on what's happening and where she is. And what's happening is before death comes, you're taken to a place. Later on, we find out that place manifests as different things to different people. For Nora, it's a library. For another person she meets in her journeys, it's a video store, like an old school VHS video store. For some, it could be a restaurant or a museum, just any place that's special to you. It'll manifest as that, and there will be someone in there from your life who's sort of there to guide you through it. So she's in this library, and there are books upon books, and as soon as she walks in, she sees the door vanish behind her. And like I said, they're just books upon books, infinite number of books as far as the eye can see. And Mrs. Elm explains to her that in each of those books is a life that Nora could have lived if she had done things differently. And so she can pick a book off a shelf, and once she opens it, she'll be transported into that life. Once she's there, she can stay there. Sometimes she'll stay for hours, sometimes she'll stay for days or weeks or months even. And if in her heart she believes that's the perfect life for her, she can stay there. But the moment she begins to feel disappointed, she'll be transported back to the library. So what happens after that is an absolutely delightful look at all of the different lives that Nora could have lived. And what I loved about this book is it takes us through a lot of them. A lot of them. And I love those kind of stories. Like It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite Christmas movies. YouTuber Melanie Murphy, she wrote a book a couple years ago called If Only, that had similar sort of vibes where you could see what could have been, and I love that. I love getting to see along with the character what that life looks like. I just love it so much. It's a trope I love, and I loved that in this. I loved it so much. She got to see what it would have been like if she became that Olympic swimmer. What it would have been like if she had married Dan. What it would have been like if she was a famous rock star or a glaciologist, or if she'd went to Australia, plus other lifetimes that she hadn't even begun to imagine, because there are just infinite opportunities, infinite stories, infinite lives that are being lived. She's just not the version of herself that's living them. So I won't get into too much of the spoilers because, well, first of all, I'd be talking forever, because for every life we'd have to start from the beginning and go to the end. And of course that would take too long. But even though this book, it's not super long, I think it's only 280 odd pages, but it felt like such a rich story because so much happens. And the lessons that are learned, that, you know, the lessons that she learns while she's traveling through all of these many lifetimes, I think is just really sweet. You know, there's simple messages, there's simple lessons. It's things, you know, a lot of us know, but sometimes we forget. And it was a nice reminder. I think this book would be a lovely gift for a lot of different people. I think my daughter would love it. I'm even going to try to get my husband to read it, and he's not a big reader, but I think he would love this. It's beautifully written, and I enjoyed it so much. I can already tell that this is going to be a book that I pick up multiple times to read. Multiple times. I really liked Nora. I thought she was relatable. I thought her struggles were ones that we could all understand. I loved Mrs. Elm, the librarian. I thought she was lovely. Now, I am going to get into a little bit of spoilers here. So if you don't want any spoilers, now's the time to click away, and just know I wholeheartedly recommend 5 stars, 2 thumbs up, the whole bit. Would recommend. So if you don't want spoilers, now's the time to click away. What I found really interesting was the final life that she goes into that isn't her root life, as it's called, her first life, is one where she's a wife to a man that she knew in her core life, but that she didn't really get a chance to know better because she had been dating Dan. And so in this life, she's married to him, and she has an amazing job, and he's got a fantastic job, and they have this gorgeous daughter, this little girl named Molly. And, you know, Nora's just, she's very content in that life, and she stays there for a few weeks. And what begins to happen is she feels like she didn't earn it, this life. And as much, you know, as much as she loves Molly, and as much as she knows in her heart she could love this man, she feels like she didn't earn it, and she can't let herself be entirely happy because of that. And it's the disappointment in that that causes her to go back to the Midnight Library for one final time, because she's realized, of course, as I'm sure you can tell where this is going, she's realized that there's still so much good back in her original life. She now, as she's gone through all of these different lives, she's been able to see that there is a way for her to save the original life. Maybe, you know, she can go and find that man that she married in the previous life, go and find him, get to know him. Maybe they would go on to have that child, you know, or a child similar. When she gets back, she reconnects with her brother, and they begin to have a really excellent relationship. You know, whereas before they were both kind of avoiding mending those fences, she goes back fully ready to do her part, and he welcomes her back. And she starts to see little things, as in It's a Wonderful Life, little things that changed for the worse for other people, even her next door neighbor. Like in one of her lives, she learns that he's in a nursing home, whereas in her original life, he was her neighbor, and he had always told her how much he didn't want to go into a nursing home. And she stops and thinks to herself, like, the only thing that's changed for him is that I'm not his neighbor. And she sees that maybe by being his neighbor and the ways that she would help him, that allowed him to live a more independent life like he wanted. So she takes, you know, the selfishness, as it were, out of it, and sees the way that other people's lives were affected for the negative, and that really inspires her and motivates her to go back to the original life and live it. And she goes back with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that it's never too late. All of the things, all of the bits and pieces from the lives she visited, those bits and pieces that she loved, she can have in her original life. And so she goes back, and she even finds Mrs. Elm. She finds her, she's old, and they play chess together. And I just thought it was a really, really sweet ending, because Mrs. Elm didn't have any family to visit her, and now she does. And it was a lovely ending. It was a lovely book. It was a feel-good book, but also explored a lot of really interesting things, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone that loves books, but especially anyone that loves that what could have been, exploring what could have been. You will love this, I'm sure. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope all is well with you, and I will see you again real soon. Bye.